Recording in progress.
Okay, once again, welcome everyone. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, paying our full respects to elders past, present and emerging, and a shout out to anyone that is of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander on our session today. So welcome to everyone for Module 4 of Safe System Assessment. I'm sure you're all over it now. We're almost done, 2 more modules to go. Hopefully, yeah, you're enjoying the course so far. Good to have you all here again today. And I'll hand over to Ken. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. And we are hoping everybody's all over it because they've done an assignment and they got some feedback on that. And most people are really getting their head around exposure, likelihood and severity, categorization, starting to understand how to look at infrastructure from, that risk perspective. And then thinking about how we suggest treatments that really align highly with safe system principles. And this session is me really just talking you through the specifics of the process of how you do an assessment. And that is what you're going to be then putting into practice after the session. And Loretta is going to show you in the learning management system where to find your assignment, where to find the site that we've allocated to you near your home or your office or whatever address you gave us, where we've custom made a site for you, maybe others in your area. And you'll be using that and putting it into practice. And you are being marked on this one. You'll have an experienced safe system assessor review your submission, make comments, give you advice and give you your marks. So there's also some time allocated in this session to answer any questions that you may have, any questions associated with how to do the assessments, what the task is, and anything else you might want to know about safe system or the like. We do have a bit of time allocated for that. If we don't use it, we will simply hand it back to you to get going on your assignment, because the assignment does take probably a couple of hours, but you do have a fortnight to get it done. But it's good to get it moving. Okay, anything else before I jump into it, Loretta? We're good to go?
No, I think you're good to go. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, we'll keep your questions coming in the chat, everybody, and we'll get into it. So we did spend a good part of the first session talking about the philosophy of the safe system. I think you can sort of see now how the assessment process aligns with that. It starts that thinking. We do have the ability to think about other road safety elements, the vehicles, the people associated with not just the infrastructure when we're doing the assessment. And I'll talk to you about that near the end of the session today. But yeah, people make mistakes. That is why I suppose we're acknowledging that severity of crash when we think about exposure likelihood severity, because the severity is saying something's gone wrong. There's been a mistake and there's a crash. What's then the energy in that crash? And the shared responsibility means we can't just push all of that responsibility to the individual road user. And in fact, us as system designers are the ones that should hold the ultimate responsibility. Now, we spent a long time talking about exposure and likelihood and severity. And I talked again last module, and if you missed it for some reason, go back, watch the early part of the recording, because I spend a fair bit of time talking about what exposure is in a safe system assessment, and that's important. I think you'll see as I roll into the safe system assessment matrix, it'll make a little bit more sense. It'll become a little bit clearer, but I think the puzzle pieces are coming together nicely. And in terms of the severity of injury, the outcome, exposure likelihood, and its severity, we look at these biomechanics of injury curves at different speeds, We got some good detail around that. We talked about that 10% line as a sort of threshold way of thinking. But I did point you at this, and I'll be pointing you at this again. Severity scoring guidance sheet, generally giving you guidance on how severe an outcome we might expect from a crash between specific road users at specific speeds, bullet vehicle speeds. And that's what we generally feel. And it is very much a graded, shaded thing, because it's not like a very distinct line that you would say, oh, no, it's ticked over that line. It's very much going to be a serious injury or the like. Some will be serious injury. Some will be minor injury. Some will be fatal. But we know this is a general gauge for what we're expecting. And so we'll be coming back to use this when we go to score the severity of crashes. Okay, so how do we actually, I suppose, do this safe system assessment? A little bit of a spot poll just to see where this group is at with safe system assessing. Now, I don't know, Loretta, if do you want me to pop that up, or you got that there? I can.
Maybe, yeah, if you can pop it on. I haven't got that one ready to go.
That's all right. We are in module 3 or 4, I think 4. Here we go.
4?
Yeah, launching that. Okay, so what has been your involvement with safe system assessments? Nothing. Safe system what now? I've heard the term, but don't know much more. I've had one done on one of my projects. Done one. I live, breathe, and eat safe system assessments. Now, remember, this, of course, has nothing to do with marking. It's just gauging a bit of where we're all at. Now, I suspect at least you've heard of them, because I have been talking about safe system assessments and you signed up for a safe system assessment course. But we'll see where the group is at. I'll give it another 10 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Paul, let's see where people are at. Okay, most people heard the term, don't really know much more about it, but you're starting to build your knowledge, and this will really solidify exactly how it's done and what it is. Today's session. Okay, we've got a few people who have had them done on their projects, and a number that have done them, and that's good. And hopefully you're getting a little bit more clarity as we go on some of the specifics of how to do them. But that's good. It's good that people have been starting to get into them and do them. I will start sort of from the basics of filling out the assessment framework. You can't do these assessments without understanding the philosophy of the safe system and building up that exposure, likelihood, and severity knowledge and the like. So that's why we've sort of stepped you up to this point rather than jumping straight in here. And I will point you at the actual safe system assessment framework, and we've put this in the resources folder. It's an Austroads document that was developed in 2016, released in late 2016. So I was on the working group for this. I wasn't one of the authors of it, but was involved in a lot of the discussions around it. It was a really interesting process. But the reason Austroads came up with the process was that we're at a time where people were sort of embracing the safe system as a philosophy. And ministers were signing up, chief executives were signing up, departments were all signing up. We will commit to the safe system approach to road safety. And then it sort of had started to flow down to programs and projects. And well, you have to your project has to be safe system and your program has to be safe system. And people were then like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what? And there was debates and arguments about whether things were or were not safe system. And Austrade sort of said, well, we need some way to sort of check how well things are aligning with safe system principles. And I always talk about it being a little bit meaningless to talk about safe system in a binary sense, like that is safe system or that is not safe system. It's more that's not well aligned with safe system principles, and that's not well aligned, or that is well aligned with safe system principles, because you'll see sort of pure safe system is something I don't think we really sort of know what it is. I mean, we do kind of, but in the practical sense, you don't get there. Well, you kind of, well, almost do with sort of fully closing roads and things like that. But anyway, I'll explain that a little bit more. But since the Austrade Safe System Assessment Framework was released, the jurisdictions started doing safe system assessments, and people were out there doing them. And then they were finding a few little things in the Austrade's guidance document that didn't quite work for one reason or another. And that's sort of understandable, because when Austrade's released that, nobody had really been doing any of these. And then the jurisdictions, so they created supplements or their own guidelines that sort of sit there and reference back to the Austrade's guide. But these are the ones that clarify a few things and set jurisdictional specifics on how safe system assessments will be done. So you can see there, Victoria's released one, South Australia's released one, and that one over here is the New Zealand Safe System Audit Guidelines. So they've combined safe system assessments and road safety audits into one methodology. So what I'll be talking you through in terms of the specifics in today's session is around the way that industry practices safe system assessments. It's almost exactly what is in the Austrade's document. However, there are a couple of little bits that are maybe a little bit different. Okay, I want to start at one of the outputs of a safe system assessment. So when you receive a safe system assessment or you do a safe system assessment, you'll be producing something like this as part of the report. And it is a iconic part of a safe system assessment as it's played out. People are looking for this. They want to see this kind of graph, which shows them different crash types down the bottom: runoff road, head-on, intersection, pedestrian, crashes with pedestrians or cyclists or motorcyclists or other crashes. And then it shows them this safe system alignment score, and lower scores are better in a safe system assessment. And think of them almost as risk. And it's not quite. I mean, it is risk, yeah. So lower is better. And in this one, like what you're seeing there, the red there would be the existing conditions. What's there at the moment at this intersection? And that's the risk profile of what's there at the moment. Now, they seem to have three options here. They've got an option to build a roundabout, and they've got an option to build a modified T intersection with traffic signals, and they've got a conventional T intersection with traffic signals. And so you can see there for the different crash types, the assessment is able to show, well, what changes for runoff road crashes, for head-on crashes, for pedestrian, cyclists, for all these crash types. And it gives you a gauge immediately. If we're building this, where are we going to see risk decrease, increase? How much is it going to decrease by? And what can we expect? And so that's a really valuable and worthwhile thing for the people doing the development of this project, the planning around which of these intersection forms is the best aligned with safe system principles. But also you'll see that there are also recommendations on how each of these intersection forms could be done in a way that aligns better with safe system principles. So the first thing you do when you're asked to do a safe system assessment is to build your understanding of the context of the project, the context of the site, the land use. And Austroads started with these safe system assessment context prompts. And they're in that Austroads document. And you can sort of ask these questions of your client or any other questions you want that might help you get a rounded understanding of what's going on. Now, this might help you in actually assessing their designs or the existing conditions, but it's more likely it's going to help you with coming up with helpful and useful and practical recommendations to improve their project. So it's a bit like road safety auditing in most jurisdictions in that sense, that you're going to look at it, you're going to assess it, and then you're going to make some recommendations on how they could improve alignment with or improve the safety of the outcomes. It's just this is done in a slightly different manner. But you're asking questions like, why are you doing the project? What are you trying to achieve out of this project? What are your objectives? What's the function of the road? What's the growth in the area? Do you have movement of place categorization? What's the speed environment? Have you committed to different speed limits in different areas? What road users are present? What are the vehicles that are there? What are you expecting? So lots of questions like that. Gather that context. And then we get into the, I suppose, meat of a safe system assessment. And this is what we call the safe system assessment matrix. And you can see the matrix has 3 rows: exposure, likelihood, and severity. Okay. So you can see why I've been banging on about exposure, likelihood, and severity, because you're going to need to be able to sort of think and categorize as you assess. And across the top here, the columns, we've got the crash types, which is runoff road, head-on, and intersection. Now, they are crashes with vehicles. So vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, or vehicle to whatever they're running off the road and hitting in terms of trees, power poles, culverts, buildings, whatever it is. So that's what you need to think about: the vehicle to vehicle crashes at intersections. So that could be car to car, car to truck, car to, that's it, truck to truck, I suppose. When we're thinking about running off the road, we're thinking about cars running off the road and trucks running off the road and head on the same. Then if we've got a pedestrian involved, we're thinking about pedestrian crashes. Now, this could be your prediction that a pedestrian will be struck as they're crossing this intersection. Now, even though that crash or the prediction of the crash you're talking about has happened at an intersection, it's categorized or accounted for in our safe system assessment matrix as a pedestrian crash. So we want to think about it maybe as the road user that's injured or killed in your crash prediction. And it's the same with cyclists. So if a cyclist is struck at an intersection in your prediction, then we categorize it or account for it in cyclist. And same with motorcyclists. So anybody that does any sort of crash reduction studies, black spot programs and the like, I think you understand a little bit about this if you've used DCA codes or RUM codes, which are codes for classifying crashes. And we've classified as a pedestrian crash or a cyclist crash. Runoff road. And I suppose the slight difference in that is motorcycles would often categorize it as just a runoff road crash as a motorcycles, but we would, in that sense, think about it in this safe system assessment as a motorcycle crash. Now, other sits in here as a bit of freedom for the assessment team to utilize this if they want, for any crash type they don't believe is adequately noted or accounted for in these other crash types. So what are some of the common crashes we might think about in other? Well, we might predict that we're going to have crashes at a railway level crossing. That would sit into other. We might think we're going to have crashes at a sideswipe crashes with animals. I mean, none of these are really accounted for in the other crash types. So you can utilize this category to account for that risk. So what we do then, or our aim, is to put a number out of 4 in each of these cells. Out of 4. So we've got to get some sort of number out of 4. A 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. 4 being the worst and 0 being the best. So let's start with exposure. So we're thinking about how many vehicles are exposed to runoff road crash risk. And the way you do that is simply using your AADT, your annual average daily traffic, your volume of vehicles that are going through the road section. And that gives you then the exposure. It's as simple as that. So if you are given, which a lot of the time you are, an AADT, you simply take that AADT, and it could be, I don't know, maybe it's 3,000. Right? And you might write down, given the AADT of 3,000, and you put it in, maybe write it in there. But obviously 3,000 is not between 0 and 4. So we need some sort of way to bring that back into those numbers that we're talking about. And this is where you use the Safe System assessment scoring reference sheet straight out of the Austroads document. And I've reproduced it here on the next 2 slides. You can use this, or you can go to the Austroads document if you want, which is all reproduced there. And you see it's got numbers 1 and 2, 3, 4, and a 0. And you can see there's a bit of description for exposure and likelihood and severity. So let's start with a 4 for exposure. Okay, what does it say here? Volumes of vehicles that might be involved in a particular crash type are very high, or the road's very long. Therefore, exposure is very high. Now, first thing I do, for runoff road head-on and other crash types, AADT is greater than 10,000 vehicles per day. There you go. You've got a number. You've got a number greater than 10,000 vehicles a day. For cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcycle crash types, volumes are greater than 100 units per day. Okay, so we've got some just numbers to refer to. Okay, let's have a look at what a 3 is. Volume of vehicles that might be involved in a particular crash type are high. Therefore, exposure is high. Runoff road, head-on, and other crash types. AADT is between 5,000 and 10,000. For pedestrian, cyclists, motorcycle crashes, between 50 and 100 units per day. For a 2, what are we talking about? Between 1,000 and 5,000 vehicles a day. Or between 10 and 50 for pedestrian, cyclists, and motorcycles. Okay, that was the one. We said it was 3,000 vehicles a day. 3,000 sits between 1,000 and 5,000. So let's go back here. And what would we say? A 2. A 2. So, we're able to then put a 2 in there. Now, we've got a question that's come in. Do we consider number of lanes while we're scoring exposure? Well, the answer to that is no. I mean, the number of lanes will have an influence on the volume of vehicles that is going through an area, but the volume of vehicles is the AADT. It could all be crammed into one lane, or it could be spread out over 2 or 3 lanes, right? Actually, the number of lanes in the sense of our accounting will influence the likelihood of crashes, because you have more conflict point, you have more weaving, you have more potential likelihood of different crash types associated with that. So so I hope that sort of answers that. But really, exposure you keep simple. It's volume. Okay, so Glenn's asked a question, which is one of those little things that I mentioned, which Austroads is slightly, the Austroads documentation and the way the jurisdictions have played it out and is written in the jurisdictional guidance and industry practices, it is slightly different. Well, is around the length of the section of road. You don't actually account for length of section of road when you're doing a safe system assessment from any perspective. So they initially put that, but it doesn't quite make any sense as an exposure mechanism. Yes, okay, in one sense you could say likelihood is there, but it's kind of meaningless to talk about it in that sense. So in the end, regardless of your section, you're still just thinking through exposure, which is your AADT. And if your road has a significant homogeneous change, which would impact on exposure, or the carriageway significantly changes, the cross-section changes dramatically, you would actually sort of cordon those off into different matrices. I've got one of those fact sheets that I pointed you to last session was about how to do a safe system assessment on a long route. And it's more about breaking it up rather than trying to sort of in some weighted way account for the exposure to crashes. Good question, though. Thank you, Glenn. I think prize there for Glenn for that question.
Okay.
So we've gone, okay, and we've got our exposure to crashes at a 2 to run-off road crashes. Let's go with our exposure to head-on crashes. Well, it's the same. I mean, unless for some reason they had a rigid concrete barrier down the middle of the road, so you couldn't actually get across to have a head-on crash, and then you'd make it a 0 for exposure to head-on crashes. But if it's got a center line, a wide center line, even a median, like a grassed median with curbing, it's all still, you've got the potential to cross that, have a head-on crash. It's just, it's getting less likely as you make it wider and bigger and the like, but it's certainly, there is a possibility, the exposure is there, and the exposure is just based on that number, that AADT. So we'll put a 2 in there. Now, intersection, we might have our road with 3,000 vehicles a day, and it crosses another road with 3,000 vehicles a day. So we make our exposure the addition of our 3,000 and our 3,000 here. And it goes to then 6,000. And 6,000 has actually ticked us up into the next category, hasn't it? It's gone up to a 3. So we'll put that as a 3. Now then we might think about other crashes. Maybe we're thinking about sideswipe crashes or the like, and so it's often most likely going to be a 3 as well. Sorry, a 2, because same as these ones, the volume of traffic. Then we say, okay, how many pedestrians are exposed to crashes here? And this is where we start to think about, well, what is the number of pedestrians crossing or walking along this road? And in practice, you find that a lot of times you're not given good information on this. For some reason, people have, 20 years worth of AADT data for you and nothing for pedestrians or cyclists. Sometimes they do for motorcyclists, but sometimes you have to make a judgment. Sometimes they're a little bit better and they're able to provide that. But you might make that call yourself based on what you see out there, what you know of the area, discussions with the project team. They know a bit about the area and you get then an idea. And you're able to say, okay, well, we think maybe 10 to 12, 10 to 15 pedestrians are going to be crossing there every day. And that we look simply and say, oh, okay, well, that's a 2 for pedestrians. We put a 2. And we say the same for cyclists. Okay, how many cyclists are going to be going through there? Now, people might often sort of say to me, oh, well, on Sunday morning, there's a pack of cyclists that go through there. There's about 20 of them. So how do I account for that? Well, I don't account for that in this matrix, particularly in a safe system assessment. I will put that into another section of the whole safe system assessment, which is asking more qualitative questions rather than trying to quantify specifics, because that sort of throws out your whole, I suppose, way of thinking about this intersection. It's important and we've got to sort of factor that into our decision making, but this is really about your, I suppose, AADT style thinking of cyclists. So, maybe there's only a couple of cyclists that you expect going through there, commuter style cyclists. So maybe less than 10 units a day. So we're going to go a 1 for cyclists. And then motorcyclists. Now, little bit of a rule of thumb, you could use 1% of AADT for cyclists if you want. If you're not given, any good information, 1% is a reasonable way to think of it. 1 to 2%, unless it's a popular motorcycle route that you're aware of for some reason or another. But 1% usually is good. So what's that? 30. So 30 motorcyclists going through there, and we can go back to here. Well, more than that. And again, that'd sit in R2 there. And so you can see there, we immediately got the exposure numbers, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. You've got some numbers that have gone there by using that scoring reference sheet. Pop your questions is that in as we go. I'll keep ticking along and we will we'll take our break in a little bit. But let's go to likelihood of crashes. So likelihood of crashes is a bit more subjective. So it's pretty clear cut with the volume of vehicles. If you're given volumes, you just simply look it up and that's what it is. For likelihood, this isn't going to use your judgment and your understanding of what's going to increase the likelihood of crashes. And there's a few dot points in there to start your thinking. Maybe for run-off road, you'd be thinking about, well, what's the speed? What's the geometry here? Have we got curves? Is it undulating? Have we got adverse crossfall? Are there shoulders present, or is it unsealed shoulders or sealed shoulders? Is there drop-offs? Are there barrier systems? Are there hazards, and how far off the edge line are these hazards? What's the guidance delineation? Have we got good line marking, RIPMs, guideposts? Is there good lighting? All of these sorts of things are factoring into your thinking. And you can see at the bottom there, we say, etc., because there's just huge numbers of extra things. You might think about the surface of the road. You might think about, I don't know what else. Anything that you might see out there that you think, okay, that could influence the chance somebody crashes. And you start to dot point all of these things out within your safe system assessment matrix, that cell of the matrix. and you dot point your thoughts, what you've seen out there, what you're thinking about. And then you go to your scoring reference sheet here and you say, okay, we're looking at a crash likelihood now. We say, okay, what's a 4 here? The likelihood of individual road user errors leading to a crash is high given the infrastructure in place. PG, high approach speed to a sharp curve, priority movement control, filtering right turn across several opposing lanes, high speeds. So we're thinking about how is the infrastructure playing a role in contributing to crashes happening. And we need to take out of our mind the number of road users going through the area, because that's been accounted for in exposure. So we're simply trying to get this gauge of the infrastructure's influence on the chance of individual crash. And to do this, you're kind of doing a relative likelihood across intersections, across, your knowledge of what is a high likelihood or a low likelihood intersection. You've got a little bit of guidance there on that 4. If we're talking about a curve and it's high approach speeds and it's got adverse crossfall and it's got bad delineation on the approach to it and unsealed shoulders and hazards close to the road. I mean, these are the kind of things you're starting to put up and say, that's at a relative sense, high likelihood that people are going to fail here and going to leave the road. If you've got perfectly straight alignment, you've got great sealed shoulders, audio tactile, edge line and center line, great delineation. And, maybe you've got some lower speed limits in place, good lighting, all of this nicely, beautifully set up. You're down in the very low, sort of lower categories of the chance of somebody crashing. But it's very hard to say that nobody will crash. Because we are trying to take into account human normal mistakes. You'll see a 0 in crash likelihood. There is only minimal chance of giving crash likelihood occur for an individual road user, given the infrastructure in place. Only extreme driver behavior or substantial vehicle failure could lead to a crash. Now, what within that we're talking about, though, is the normal people making mistakes, falling asleep, being distracted, and so we very rarely, almost never, put a 0 in likelihood. Yes, we do 1s when you get everything's really looking great. 1s, but to go to a 0 is a very rare thing to do in a safe system assessment for likelihood. So what you're doing then is making that judgment call yourself between a 0 and a 4, really probably between a 1 and a 4 for likelihood, on the chance that a crash will happen based on the physical infrastructure that's in place. And you're thinking there, as I said, about all of these different things for run-off road and maybe some other things, and you look at it and you say, well, yeah, okay, it is high speed, but it's maybe it's an 80 km/h road. But it's got big sealed shoulders, audio tactile edge line, audio tactile center line, good lighting, hazards are offset from the road. There's a run of trees, but they're 9 meters back. It's got good lighting, good surface. It's all looking good, but I'm still worried about the fact that people will fall asleep and they'll leave the road, and this is running off the road risk. So, what am I going to do? A 2 or a 1? Let's say I'm going to go with unlikely. It's unlikely that it'll happen. I'm going to go with a 2. That can certainly still happen. And so you go with a 2. You can see there's a bit of subjectivity to it. You've got to assess your site. Then I go to head on and I say, well, okay, there's similar characteristics to think about with run-off road and head on. But the runoff road, I had sort of about 9 meters out to hazards that I was thinking that would be hit. Head on, it's just a center line there. I know it's got audio tactile, so that's going to lessen the likelihood. But I'm going to go with a 3 on this because there's more chance that they're going to have a head on than it is for a runoff road. So I'm going to go with that. It is likely that a given crash type will occur. Then you go to intersection and you start to do the same thing. You think about your intersection controls. You're saying, well, okay, is this a give way type intersection or a stop sign type intersection, or we got a roundabout there, or we got traffic signals? What is the type of control we've got at this intersection? How fast are vehicles going through this intersection? And what's the design of it? Have we got a straight through, see-through effect happening? Have we got strange skewed intersection design? Have we got other features? Is it obvious there's an intersection coming up? Can we see it well? Has it got good warning of it? How many conflict points are we talking about? Have we restricted some movements, lessened the chance of a crash by lessening the number of conflict points, the number of movements? And again, the list goes on. Is it well lit? Is it, warning signs faded, or have we got things blocking views? Have we got sightline impediments? You keep working through all of these different things, jotting them down, and you come up with a decision, of your choice. It's unlikely, it's likely, it's highly likely, whatever you're deciding.
We do have a question here, Ken, from Ellen. So do you think about how often a crash type runoff road or head on may happen when scoring the likelihood? Yeah, so it's a really good question associated with, could we use crash history to help us get more clarity around their scoring? The answer on that really comes down to the fact that crash history will or should align with the product of exposure, likelihood, and somewhat severity. So you might be able to gauge a bit of an indication from that. But yeah, I caution people against using crash history, particularly data, because you can certainly get high safe system scores, so bad alignment with safe system principles that hasn't got a crash history. The fundamental risk is there. It may not have played out yet as crashes. More often than not, if you do have somewhere that has high exposure, and then your likelihood and severity will play out, and it generally aligns up with crash history. But just be a little bit cautious on immediately jumping to that as the way to work out these numbers. So you come up with your decision on your intersection score, and you do the same for other and pedestrians. You're going to thinking about, okay, not thinking about the number of pedestrians that are crossing, because that's already been accounted for, but what are the facilities there? Are there crossings? Is there separation for pedestrians, or are they walking along the shoulder? Are they crossing areas where there's lots of cars turning from different directions? Are they crossing facilities off the pedestrian desire line? So quite a few of them are not using it, or you don't think they will use it. What's the speed of vehicles approaching? Are they going to have time to evade these pedestrians that are stepping out? You'd even be factoring in there, are these older pedestrians intoxicated, or are there likely to be lots of intoxicated pedestrians in this area, increasing the likelihood? Is there a public transport spot? People are far more likely to crash if there's a public transport spot stop there, because they
will run for their bus or their tram or their train as it's coming. So you're again factoring this in, thinking about all of these things, and you come up with your decision as to how likely it is. Again, using the same scoring. So there we're saying, oh, it's unlikely. We don't know. It's unlikely. It's got, maybe in this one, it's got good sight distance, really great sight distance, and from the crossing points, and well, actually, it's probably going to be higher if it was an 80k road. I did in this hypothetical, so we'll make that a 3 then. Cyclists, same thing. You're thinking about, okay, do we have cycle lanes? Do we have separated cycle facilities? Do we, what's the speed of the road? Any crossing points? How are they designed? And the like. So we can go 3 there. High, so it's likely, because we've taken into account that there's not many cyclists. But for the ones that are there, we're thinking it's likely that crashes will happen. And motorcyclists, motorcyclists are more likely to crash. They're smaller, they're inherently unstable. And so you can almost look at what you've got here and say, well, we're going to go a bit higher potentially than any of that, but I'll go with a 3 for motorcyclists as well. So you can see you've landed there on scoring for the likelihood of crashes. There is subjectivity to this. People have been, analysing roads for road safety, crash potential, often very sort of refined at their likelihood scoring. Road safety auditors, it's a lot of that thinking packed into this one. Then you go to severity and you do the same thing, but you're using the crash severity column in this one. And you see here, for a 4, should a crash occur, it is highly likely that it will result in fatality or serious injury to any road user involved. Kinetic energies are high enough to cause a fatal serious injury crash, and it is unlikely that forces will be dissipated before reaching the road user. So what that means is, it's like dissipated before reaching the road user could be cushioned. So the vehicle could hit a cushion and that energy absorbed, or redirected along a barrier system or the like. But speed is going to be a heavily influencing factor in the outcome of these crashes, because now we're putting ourselves in a mindset, crash is happening. How bad is it going to be? So a 3, should a crash occur, it is likely that it will result in fatality or serious injury. And a 2 is unlikely that it'll result in a fatality or serious injury. We're going to use this as a bit of an assistance, a bit of help. So you can see now why we had a 4, we got a 0 down here, and you're going to be sort of trying to work out where it might fit in that based on the crash you're expecting, pedestrian versus car, and you're saying, I think it's going to happen sort of around that 40 km/h mark, and from that you'd be saying, okay, well, somewhere in this sort of general range here and somewhere around here, and I might be thinking 3 or 2, 3, somewhere in that range, and that's how you're able to use this. General indication only. You need to make a bit of judgment yourself on a number of factors out there, but that should be able to help you. And so you're thinking about speed in all of them. I mean, the speed, that's so influential on the severity of crashes, but also then factoring into this, say for run-off road, well, are there barriers? Are there barriers? We know if they're going to hit them, redirect that energy, dissipate it over time. Maybe we might factor in how many heavy vehicles we've got. If we've got head on and then there's lots of heavy vehicles, one of those hitting that is a more serious event because there's more mass, and that's in our energy equation. At intersection, we'd be thinking about vehicles crashing in different angles of crash. Speed heavily for all the other ones. Occasionally, you might factor in a few other little things, like if it's a lot of older pedestrians in the area, you might think, oh, it's going to be more serious from that perspective. But generally, those are some ones that you can have a think about. And so you then start to put in your scores on, what this crash outcome is going to be. And, maybe 3 there because we're saying it's going to be bad. Like, okay, we've got this 9 meters to the trees, but when they get to those and they hit a tree, it's going to be pretty bad. Okay, they're going to wash off some speed as they do that, but it's going to be bad. I mean, that maybe could be a 4, but let's 4 on that. Intersection for other sideswipe crashes, we're going to say, actually, I think we're okay on sideswipe crashes. They're not severe crashes, and so that's down. Pedestrians struck at these speeds, it's going to be very bad, bad, and bad. Now, I've sort of gone through that quite quickly. You're going to spend a bit more time justifying these scores you get to with dot points about what you saw, what you thought about, and then you get to these scores. And then what you do is you multiply down. And so you're able to then get scores for each of these. Now the scores are at a 64, and it gives you that immediate indication. So 24, and where we go? That's 24 as well. And this one, it was a, what do we say, 2. And cyclist was 12. And what do we got here? 24. So you immediately sort of see how you're able to then get some indication of the crash types you're most interested in. Now, this one had a lot of 24s in my just way that it played out, but you're able to start to see where your particular interest is. I'll take any questions on that, and then it might be a good point for us to pause for our little break, and then I'll show you sort of one played through. I don't see any immediate questions coming in. Okay, Loretta, let's take a 5-minute break. Top of the hour in East, well, at least in most states, top of the hour. We're going to get back into it, and I'll continue on. I'll leave this mess of a slide up there, and we'll get back into it in 5 minutes.
See you then. Ken, we do have a question.
Yeah.
Which I'll read out.
Okay.
Can the scoring be like not a whole number, like for example, a 2.2 or a 2.5, or do we always need to round up to a whole number?
Okay. So we'll give a prize, first person to ask it, because it's something that when the Austroads team was putting numbers in this assessment methodology, there was a little bit of debate, and I was saying, if we put numbers to this, give it to technical people, they're just going to run this off a cliff. It's going to be to like 4 decimal places they're going to try to go. And so the general comment was that this should be thought of as a generic sort of categorization of that particular aspect of risk. The same you would in like a normal risk assessment, where you'd say sort of high, medium, low, or extreme and the like, and you shouldn't really drift off a whole number. But in the end, what was the jurisdictions have said is if you really must go to a 0.5 for one reason or another, you really can't hold yourself back. You can, but no more precision than a 0.5. But we try to stick to whole numbers where we can. And it sort of helps. And it also doesn't present it as an extremely refined tool, which it's not. It's to broadly gauge alignment with safe system principles. And there are advantages to having this broad brush categorization in the way it is. But really good question to ask. And yeah, so you can go to a 0.5 if you need. Okay, so we've got to a point where we're able to sort of get these numbers. And I'm going to keep ticking along here. So let's just sort of see a bit of an example of one played out. This is a bit pared back and a little bit, more simplified just to keep us able to do it within these training sessions. I can show you maybe a real live one with it that has a bit more detail later. But here we go. We've got an intersection. It's got give way control. It's a sort of T intersection. It's its existing arrangement. And then there's a proposal or a plan to put a roundabout there is one thing they're thinking about. Another thing they're thinking about doing is a modified T intersection with traffic signals, as you can see a bit of a design there. And the third idea they've got is a conventional T intersection with traffic signals, and it's got some slip lanes and other bits and pieces. So what you do when you're doing a safe system assessment is, first of all, you look at the existing road environment. What's there as it is now? So we go back here. What is it there? And you go out and you're looking at the site and you say, okay, yep, there's the intersection. Okay, it's got reasonable sight distances. What are the speeds of vehicles coming down the hill? Has it got lighting? And what are the roadside hazards? Okay, there's a power pole close to the road there. And okay, it's got a footpath. There's no pedestrian crossing points, though. You're factoring all of this in, and you then start to grab that assessment matrix and you fill it out. And you write your information in there. And you can see here that you write, what are the factors that influence or increase likelihood? What are the factors that decrease likelihood at this location? What are the factors that are increasing severity? What are the factors that are decreasing severity? So you're dot pointing lots of these ideas out before you then land at your score. And you can see here in this mock example, I have gone to a 0.5. I was going to mention it if nobody asked the question at that point. And you then get your severity and you get your score. So you can see there's a bit more than just plonking a number in. You've got to justify it a bit. And the way it's generally done is with that. Here are the things that increase. Here are the things that decrease. Here's the outcome of that assessment. If you go through and you do that for all of your crash types, for exposure and likelihood and severity, and you get this matrix filled out with scores. Then what you do is you copy that. You copy the whole thing. And my tip is to make sure you're really comfortable with it, really get it all nice, you're happy with it, existing conditions, you've got a good feel for that. Copy the whole table, paste it, and then look at your design and say, okay, now they're going to build a roundabout. What am I predicting will be the crashes when it's a roundabout? So you've got to look at this design and you've got to imagine it built and then imagine road users using it. And what does that change? What does that change in terms of the exposure and the likelihood and the severity? And you think, okay, well, actually, we can cross that one out and we can cross that one out. We can cross that one out because they don't exist anymore because it's now a roundabout. And we can add in these two because they're going to decrease the chance of crash for one reason or another. And we're going to change the score. And you can see you're making it clear where changes are made by changing the color So you cross out things that have been removed when this new infrastructure is built. You add things in a different color when new stuff has come in. And if you change a score, you can change the color. Now, we've made a template for you to make this easier, which actually splits this in two, so you can even more easily do this. But this is what you'd be expecting to sort of see that you produce. Then you're going to go back and you're going to grab that existing conditions matrix. You're going to paste it again, and you're going to manipulate it for the next option, which is a modified T intersection. You do the same thing. Then you're going to go back and you're going to grab it again, and you're going to do the same for the conventional T intersection. And so this is sort of how you, in a methodical way, think through the different crash types and the exposure and the likelihood and severity and the alterations that are being made at this intersection with these design forms. And you're able to then get to a point where you could produce total scores if you wanted. So you could say for this one, the existing conditions was 118.5 out of 448. 448, I should have mentioned, is the addition, all the way back here, sorry, is the addition of all of these. So down the bottom, you add them. So you multiply down and you add across. And you can get a total out of 448. So your total score at 448 for the existing conditions was 118.5. For the roundabout option, it went down to 90. For the modified T intersection with signals, it was 99. For the conventional T intersection, it was 105. So what that says at a very high level is that every one of those changes that they proposed, or the different design options that they had there, that will improve alignment with safe system principles. The roundabout is going to give us the most alignment with safe system principles. But that score has come about from a whole lot of particular individual scores, and you can get a far more in-depth story by looking at this chart. And this is where we started. So you can see how we ended up getting to these scores now. And so you can see for the roundabout, we're getting benefit in lots of these categories, but that's concerning, isn't it? So even though the roundabout was best alignment with safe system principles, for one particular crash type with cyclists, we think that it makes things worse. Okay, motorcyclists don't seem to be getting much benefit out of any of this, and you can get a good story out of this, and you can start to then say, okay, well, if you go down the track of that roundabout, we recommend you do more for cyclists, because they are having a worse outcome associated with this, and they're a high score to start with. So what you do is make these recommendations for the roundabout, for the signals options, and you say, why don't you consider these things associated with this project? So then when you make those recommendations, those things for them to consider adding or changing or adapting their designs, we tend to categorize those into primary or supporting. Now, this is probably going to be one of the more challenging things for you, and might be something you get some feedback from the assessors on and you try and get your head around. But firstly, I want you to think about these as buckets. I'm going to draw little handles on them, or little bags of treatments. Okay. There's a whole lot of different things we think of as supporting treatments in here. There's a whole lot of things we think of as primary.
Ken, we've lost you. And if you can hear me, we have lost you. You've just frozen on us. Sorry, everyone. Some technical difficulties. Thanks for your patience. Well, maybe Ken might log out and log back in. Sorry about that. Hopefully not too long. Unfortunately, I can't continue on with the learning. I have no idea. So sorry about that. Won't be too long. You're back.
Yep. Sorry.
All right. That's okay. We can hear now.
Yeah, no, my internet dropped out. I'm hotspotting now. What fun. Okay. So you lost me just as I was, I think, explaining primary and supporting. So I'm just going to reshare my screen there, and I'll start a little bit again. Yeah, so we've got these buckets of treatments, primary and supporting, and yeah, the primary ones are things that virtually eliminate. There are big ticket items, and they very much reduce the severity of incidents and really make things a whole lot safer. For supporting treatments, are always things that they've got to improve road safety overall, but they're not really expected to virtually eliminate the potential for fatal serious injury crashes occurring, because people will make mistakes and they will still crash, and we've got to think about how that all plays out. So every time you suggest something, you categorize into primary or supporting treatment. Now, I put non-safe system treatments here just as a bit of definition. You wouldn't be suggesting non-safe system treatments, but it's more for terminology purposes. Now, this might be a little bit confusing in your mind. I'm going to point you shortly at within the Austroad Safe System Assessment Framework, they just list lots of different treatments for crash types, and they categorize them into primary and supporting. So that will help you get a feel. Now, you might come up with something completely different that's not in there as an idea, and you've got to then use the principles to categorize it, but it will help you engaging alignment with, where it's, whether it's primary or supporting. So I think I'll show you that when we jump into learning management system. We bring the Safe System Assessment Framework up, and I'll point you at that to help you with that thinking. Okay. So after you've done all of this, or maybe even before you've done all this, but part of an assessment is to ask these qualitative questions. They're questions around road users, vehicles, and post-crash care. So these we don't put scores to. We just put our thoughts. As a safe system assessment team, you have a discussion about this. Is there anything we noticed? And the questions are set there, prompt questions from Austroads. Are road users likely to be alert and compliant? And are there factors that might influence this? What are the expected compliance and enforcement levels? Alcohol, drugs, road rules, driving hours. What's the likelihood of driver fatigue? I mean, are we in an urban area? So if people falling asleep is less likely, or are we out in the middle of nowhere, 10 hours between cities? Well, we're more likely to be in driver fatigue territory. Can enforcement be conducted safely? Are there special road users, entertainment precincts, elderly, on-road activities, popular motorcycle route, distraction by environmental factors? this is probably when I mentioned that pack of cyclists that come, ride through on a Sunday morning. This is where I'd be making lots of commentary around that. And I'd be trying to think about, well, what can we do within these designs? How do we cater for that? Well, maybe we need to work with that pack of cyclists or others, or the local riding group or we need to sort of sign or cater for or create riding routes that we know of for Sunday morning or Saturday morning, or what else could be done? What is the level of alignment with the ideals of safer vehicles? Now, this question in most safe system assessment, it's somewhat meaningless when you're looking at an individual intersection or length of road. The reason that's in the safe system assessment framework is because it's a holistic framework, which is meant to be able to be used for like a mine site or a remote community or a business, and then you'd look at their fleet and what are their vehicle safety systems and what sort of, what are the levels of safety of the vehicles they're in. So mostly you don't have too much to say about that in a individual site safe system assessment. Are there factors that might attract a large number of unsafe vehicles? Is the percentage of heavy vehicles too high? Do we have recreational motorcyclists? Are there resources to detect these vehicle safety issues? Can enforcement of that be conducted safely? Has vehicle breakdown been catered for? So that's an interesting one, which has popped out in quite a number of safe system assessments where you're doing continuous barrier systems and they're really improving the severity of crash outcomes. But if vehicles break down, sometimes they're sitting in lanes, live running lanes. It's an issue to deal with, and this is where you really delve into that. And then you're into post-crash care. So are there issues that might influence safe and efficient post-crash care in the event of a severe injury? So maybe you're in the middle of nowhere. It's going to take a long time to get to. Was doing a safe system assessment with a colleague in New Zealand, and we sort of got to these points, and that is up in the mountains, and discovering motorcycle crashes up there, and it was just taking hours for any emergency care to get there, and so we were suggesting things like helicopter landing areas be cleared and created to be able to get those. Extract those parties. So it's broader thinking about safety and injury management and injury outcome. Do emergency and medical services operate as efficiently and rapidly as possible? That's actually more the question that generated that helicopter landing pad thinking. Are other road users an emergency response team protected during a crash event? Are drivers provided correct information to address travel speeds on the approach or adjacent to an incident? These ones really often most play out in motorway type safe system assessments where you've got lots of vehicles and you're thinking about emergency situations. How is the management of that? And again, is there information available via radio or VMS? And then another one, I suppose, which is more around that fleet, is what's the provision for e-safety? Safety systems based on modern information, communication technology, cooperative, intelligent transport systems. And again, that one's more about when you've got a fleet that you can think about. So they're all just there to say, have you got any thoughts around this? I'm just trying to think, what are some of the things that have come out of these questions in infrastructure projects? Sometimes there's been ones that okay, the ability to set up a speed camera or a booze bus in an area has been eliminated or is being eliminated by the design. And so factoring in and sort of building some purpose-built areas for those vehicles has been some. Some have been changes to configurations of intersections and some fact sheets and some education suggestions to schools in the area of the best way to use this and the best way for parents to be dropping off and picking up kids associated with the way this whole new configuration works. So those sort of things have come out of it. There's a few of the things I can immediately think of. And you may not get any ideas out of this, but it may just help you with rounded thinking about the assessment. Okay, so keep your questions coming in. I think I lost all my questions with my little internet stumble there, but I think I've covered everything off.
Yep, there's no questions at the moment.
Great, thank you. So what you do is you produce a safe system assessment report, and the report should include all of these different bits and pieces. Now, I don't need to read you through all of these because there are now templates from a number of jurisdictions that you are recommended to use. So like the Victorian government template is what we're going to give you to use. They say very clearly, please, take it, rebrand it with your own branding if you want. Just keep, following the same headings, fill out the same information, keep it consistent. Let's have everybody in industry consistent with what we're producing. And you can see it's going to cover all of these different dot points. So you'll use that, you'll see it. We've paired it back. We've left all of the information in there. We've just crossed some of it out. So you don't need to fill it out for the assignment. We don't want to take up a huge amount of your time, but you'll be able to reuse that as you want for future safe system assessments with your own branding and the like. And that starts to lead us into where we're going to give you this assignment to do. So I'll talk to a couple more slides and I'll hand it to Loretta shortly to dive into the learning management system and walk you through finding your site, looking at the design, finding the template, and then I'll come back and I'll walk you through the specifics of the template. But you're going to get given this Word document. It's going to have highlighted sections in yellow, which you're all going to fill out. And it's going to have some crossed out sections that you're not going to need to fill out. Before this, we are going to ask you to go to a site. Now, we've created or collected designs for upgrades in your area, somewhere close to the address you gave us. So you're going to get that design and you're going to go out there and you're going to look at the existing conditions of that site. Then you're going to look at the design, you're going to imagine it built. But when you go out there, the purpose of going to a site is to look at that area through the safe system lens, thinking about exposure and likelihood and severity, a bit like you did with the Module 2 assignment, particularly looking at those and thinking about these crash types in the matrix and all these road users. Now, each of the sites we've looked at, we've risk assessed, and they're very safe from that occupational health and safety perspective. As long as you, there's areas to stand back from the road, to just observe, to park safely. We don't want you to be a hazard to other road users, and certainly you can do this all very, very safely. We want you to wear a high visibility vest just because it's a work assignment, I suppose, and the like. And we want you to stay off the road. This is not there's not a need to measure lane widths or, really spend a lot of time out there looking at the crossfall of the road or anything like that. You're standing back to observe the area. Don't be a hazard yourself. So don't make people walk around you on the road or those sort of things. Park safely. Don't park in areas that block sight distances or block people's walking paths or anything like that. And we have a safe work method statement, which we'll show you shortly. It's in the learning management system, and we're going to ask you to just agree to that. And it says very logical, common sense things, which you would do anyway, but we're going to put it out there. Things like that you will not be intoxicated when you go out there, that if you have to drive 4 hours to get there, that you'll take breaks. Now, I'll tell you immediately with that one, if you had to drive 4 hours to get to the site we've given you, simply email us and say, hey, can I have another site closer to here because I'm visiting my brother and he lives in Mildura and I'm up here for the next month. Okay, fine. We'll give you a site in Mildura. We're very flexible with this. We want to ensure that you're safe doing it, and we're very adaptable to give you other sites if that is required. Okay, so I think you'll probably have a few questions and need some clarity after we show you exactly how to get this out of the learning management system. But Loretta, I'll hand over to you now. If you want to grab control and show them where it is in the learning management system.
Yep, will do. Can you see my screen now, Ken?
Yes, we've got the LMS there, looking good.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm sure you've all been in here already. Well, I hope so. If not, here it is again. So going to the tile of the module for today's module, which is module 4, and you're clicking on there, and then you'll see a list of things here. So firstly, you do need to complete the quiz. So clicking on there and click on attempt quiz and follow through those questions. There's the safe statement that Ken mentioned earlier as well. So just ensure you click on there, you have a read through just to ensure that you understand, that has all the safety behind it. And then you'll see a little tick there that'll pop up because you've read that. And similar to this one, although it is sort of set up as a quiz, so we need to ensure again that, you're following that safe work method and ensure that you agree. So clicking on attempt quiz now and just follow through those questions. It's not an actual sort of quiz, but ensuring that you agree to that. And then going back one step again, and that's where we click on to complete your site visit or your assessment. So once you click here, you'll see a list of PDF documents with your name. So I might just click on the first one, for instance. So finding your PDF with your name, you might have multiple names in there. That might mean that you're in the similar location, near your workplace, for instance. So you might have multiple names there. So once you click on there, you'll see the PDF pop up and you just open the file and then it'll show you the actual site for your assessment. Just going back there, you'll see the template, and of course, Ken will run through this. So clicking on that template to bring up the Word document as well as the graph. So I'll just bring up the template quickly so that you can see what you need to obviously, fill out all of those highlighted sections that Ken will run through now. So I will hand back over to Ken, but like Ken mentioned, if the actual site that we've allocated is not convenient for whatever reason, please send me an email and I'll get my colleague to source a new site for you. But yeah, no drama at all. Filling that template out, but then you also need to upload it as a PDF as well. So I think, was there anything else that I need to cover at this stage, Ken?
No, that's good. You've done well.
Okay, great.
So what we'll do here is I'll steal the screen back and I think I'll use my other screen for this one. So hopefully you're seeing that.
Yep, we can see it.
Good. Okay, so you've downloaded the Word document and you'll see there it says complete only the highlighted sections. So this is the Victorian government's template for safe system assessment. You could reuse it again as you would like. Complete only the highlighted sections. So you can see there we've crossed out some stuff. We don't want you to write an executive summary. That's, extra time. We don't need you to spend that. You don't even need to update the table of contents or the table of figures or anything like that. You don't need to give us a bit of information here. But what we do need you to do is insert your name here. Put your name in. Don't need to do the project background and context. And in fact, you would want to do this obviously for a real safe system assessment. This is a mock one. It's trying to do that. You're just sort of assessing what's there and making some assumptions on maybe why they're doing things, and that's okay. You will provide a very brief description of the project that they're planning. So you saw there one that Loretta showed. You'll have a look at it and say, okay, well, they're proposing a signalisation of this intersection, and the speed limit is 80 kilometres an hour. And I'm going to take a snip of the design and I'm going to plonk it in here. You'll see for each of the designs that there's these fabricated traffic volumes. We want you to use those. Even if you look at it and go, oh, I know that site and that's not the right traffic volume, use this because that's part of our sort of assessment that you've got the correct ability to translate AADTs to safe system assessment scores and pedestrians and cyclists and motorcyclists. Well, you might need to think back to what I said about 1% of AADT generally. So that gives you a little bit of, okay, that's the proposed work. You plonk that in there. Section 3 here is a summary of the outcomes of the assessment. So you're going to have to do that at the end because you haven't done your assessment yet. And you're going to put a graph in there as well, but you can't produce your graph until you get some scores. So this is where you're going to spend a good bit of time. And the table here is the existing conditions for existing conditions. And we're going to leave the design one blank, okay? So you're going to get in there and you're going to write a little bit of info, and then you're going to put a score here. And you're going to write a little bit of info here, and you're going to put a score here, and continue on. Then you're going to write, sorry. Yeah. Stuffing things up. This is the existing conditions. 3, or whatever it is that you come to. Okay. So you're doing all of this, existing conditions. Then you write some factors in here, and you expect to be putting a few in here, not just 1 or 2, good few of these. And you're putting your score there for the existing conditions, and so on and so on. And you fill all of that out. Do more here, and you get the picture, I'm sure, here. And then you've completed all this, filled out lots of good stuff, put all your scores in, done a score here, or whatever it is for the existing conditions. You won't have a design score yet. And now maybe you want to put your highlights on that, maybe just to make it look a little easier. And then you're going to copy that and you're going to go down. Oh, here's an example, actually. Here's one filled out earlier, so you've got a good idea. You can delete the example if you want, but then you're going to, so let's delete these examples. Examples are there to help you see what it should be looking like. And you're going to then, you've copied the existing matrix. You're going to paste it, and then you're going to start to, change it where you think it's needed, and then you're going to put in your new scores here. 3, 3, 4. That's all the same. Then you go, oh, well, those two, they get removed because they're not there anymore. That one's still there, and there's this new one here, so I better make that one red because that's new, and I'm going to give it a score of 1 now because it's better, and let's make that red so it stands out. So you'll continue to do that for all of them. Get your final new score, which is 180, so things have got worse under this design. Make that red. And then you come down here and you say, right, I've done all that assessment. I assessed what they were planning to build, and I've got these ideas that would improve things. And I'm going to write them in here. So I've got, that's my first idea. That's my second idea. And then it's my third idea. And I've got a couple of ideas that are actually supporting treatments. So those ones were primary treatments. These ones are supporting treatments. I'll show you those a bit later. And off we go. So we're doing well. Now you might want to put a few ideas and things in there if you want. And then over here, you're going to prove to us that you went to the site. So it's going to be a selfie or something of you there on the site with a high-vis vest on. So replace me with you. So you're going to go through and do all of that. Now, to make your life a little bit easier, actually, I'm going to go here before I go. Yeah. Make your life a little bit easier. We've got this Excel graph generator. Now, you being super smart people would be able to whip this up in 2 minutes, no doubt yourself. But just to make your life a little bit easier, you can put your existing condition scores in after you've gone through and scored it in the Word document. And you can see it starts to spit out a graph. And then you'll have a design option. And you can see it comes in there as well. So you're then able to get that, either snip it or copy the thing and then bring it back in and back up here, replace yours with that one. There it is. And that's all very nice. Gives you a nice graph there. So back here, if we go to the resources folder, which in there in the documents, the resource documents, we've got the Safe System Assessment document from Austroads. So that's that one. APR 50916, Safe System Assessment Framework. And you can download that. And within this document here, if you go down a few pages, you get to this point, which is they've got run-off road crashes to the left or the right and some treatment ideas. And you can see that they've categorized these into primary, which was that bucket, or supporting. And these are supporting as well. There's two categories of supporting, but we just think of that as one, right? Primary. And so you've got some ideas there, primary and supporting. Then they do that for head-on crashes, intersection crashes, other crash types, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. So you can see there's a number of different ways to do that, to look for what are some primary treatments, what are some supporting treatments. Back in here, when you make recommendations, I mean, we would like you to put in some primary treatments. Technically, you don't need to, it could just be all supporting treatments, but we really would like you to look and push for some primary treatments there. So once you've done all of that, you'll hit save, you'll PDF the thing. If you can, that just makes our life easier. And you'll jump back in here and you'll go to the module, you'll go back in here and you'll, okay, this is in the grading mode. You will upload it just the way you did with your module 2 assignment. So add submission. and drop it in there or hit that and upload. You can see here we've got 14 days and 7 hours. That's the clock is ticking. Due date 28th at 7 p.m. Now that should give you plenty of time to do this. I say it should take you, maybe a couple of hours to pull all of that together, do some good thinking. If you're having trouble, you're struggling, you're worried about this, you don't understand aspects of it, get in contact. We can certainly set up that one-on-one meeting with you. If you're just absolutely unable to meet that, which you might need some time management in your life if you can't find 2 hours within 14 days and 7 hours to be able to do this. But if life has gone crazy, get in contact with Loretta. So just reply to the training team email and explain that, and they'll look to provide extensions as appropriate. So hit that training email as you need. Remember, if your site is not convenient for you at all, get in contact with Loretta, and we can get some changes happening there. I think that's probably pretty good.
We do have a question, sorry, in the chat, Ken, from Joseph. What is a rapid SSA? Is this different to an SSA?
It's a very good question from Joseph there. I actually explained that in module 5. The real difference that you're going to encounter on this one is you won't get asked those qualitative questions. Remember, I went through all of those, questions, big, broad ones about post-crash care and enforcement ability and all those things. You don't actually go through those in a rapid safe system assessment. There's other few little bits and pieces that are different. I'll go through that in more detail in the next one. For this assignment, simply follow that template. Do what that template says. You'll go to the site, you'll have a look at it, you've got a design, you fill all of the matrix out, you make some recommendations. Any other questions? I think we're looking pretty good. So this is great because we had allocated about this 15-minute for any wider questions, anything you wanted answers on, or we give it back to you to get started here. Download your template, download your PDF of your site, work out where your site is, start to get your head around it, finish off your quizzes, get yourself ready to jump into this over the next little bit. Of course, reach out to us if you need assistance, if you've got any questions. Otherwise, enjoy the Safe System Assessment. It's always fun. I like doing it. I like filling out the matrix and seeing what the scores pop out at and thinking about these bits and pieces.
Thanks, Ken. Well, we'll see everyone next Friday, the 21st, for Module 5. So
on that, it's actually a great opportunity because it's sort of halfway through your allotted time for the assignment. So if you've got started on it, you can ask questions. Type your questions in. I can talk to them live. But if you can reach out independently off that anyway. But yeah, looking forward to seeing you there a little bit before the session. Thank you. Thanks, Loretta.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.